everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Monday, July 28th, 2014. Today we're recording at the Communitech Hub in downtown Kitchener. Our first podcast, not at Conestoga College, but we're excited to be in a new venue for today. And we should mention, sorry that you're listening to this podcast a little later than we typically post it. We did have somebody lined up for Thursday, the regular time that we record, and we typically post on Friday mornings, but our Thursday guest had to cancel for a last-minute emergency situation, so we have a wonderful filler guest with us today. I shouldn't just call him a filler guest. He'd be a wonderful guest to have on at any time, but first I'll introduce myself. My name is Darren Conley, a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. With me, as always, is my co-host, fellow tech entrepreneur, Stephen Campbell. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm doing well, Darren. Yourself?
Just dandy, thank you.
So, hey, last week we touched on astroturfing, which was giving false reviews for campaigns online.
Right.
We did touch on social commerce a little bit, too, which was sort of Facebook or instead of e-commerce. And I gave you the option. You had stickiness you can still learn about. We have dead tree versions today, huge pipes, mommy saves, or gingerbread houses. Which would you like?
They all sound like they have horrible innuendos attached to them, so I'm a little concerned.
Not at all.
But I do love learning about the new tech vocabulary you bring to us every week, Stephen. So
let's try mommy save, because this one I thought was kind of funny. This is the act of indiscriminately clicking on save without first choosing an appropriate folder to save your files into. So an appropriate quote would be like, all of Darren's files were mommy saved in the MS Word folder, or something like that.
The way that your mother typically just hits save and has no idea where it goes.
I don't know where my pictures are.
I've never heard that term.
That's the mommy save, yeah.
That's excellent. Well, let me introduce our guest for today, and maybe he can give us his opinion on the mommy save too. Joining us today is Sam Legge. Did I pronounce it right?
Yep, Sam Legge.
Perfect. From Communitech. He's on the startup services team here and has been with them for half a year so far. How are you today, Sam?
I'm great. I didn't know about a mommy save. Is there such thing as a daddy save?
Not yet. I haven't researched that, but I often mommy save.
I think
I've been known to do it.
The daddy save is when they save the situation after the mommy is messing up.
That's autosave.
Yeah,
autosave is daddy save.
Yes,
is that when you put your pornography in the wrong folder?
What's that?
Well, see, that's the problem. You never save it on your computer. You just leave it on the internet.
Good
Not
idea.
that I ever do anything like that, of course.
Best practices.
That's right. Well, today, guys, we got some interesting articles we want to talk about. The first one is a new app called Knock, Knock. That's special sound effects provided by Stephen over there. This is an app. It was created by a group out of India. The name of the group that made it is called Dexetra. But the app is pretty simple. It's kind of a midway communication app between phone calls and texting. So the basic premise, as I understand it, is if you want to send someone a knock, you compose it like a text message, and when you send it to the recipient, it arrives the way a phone call would arrive. So the phone would ring. You can see the text, the text of the message displayed as your phone is ringing, and then your options for dealing with that message are either to reply with yes, reply with no, send your location, or you could actually send them a phone call or send them a full text message. But typically, the premise of the app is it's either yes, no, or here's my location as the responses you're sending. And I guess the genesis of this was it was originally a feature in a full-featured communication app. And the group that was building this figured we can actually pull this feature out and make it a separate app itself, because I think they said 65% of messages that are sent are just kind of status update messages anyway, or things like, where are you? Are you going to be home soon? Do you want to get together tonight? Where you just need a yes or no answer. Or to tell someone where you are. So this makes it a lot easier to do that. Interesting that it will ring for up to 60 seconds, up to 1 minute, until you decide how you want to answer the message. So it's a little more urgent than a text message, but not quite as intrusive as as a full-fledged phone call would be.
And it's unfortunate because how I would choose to answer that is not offered in their selections.
How would you choose to answer?
It wouldn't be yes, no, or maybe, or whatever.
You need a middle finger icon or something to send to them?
Somebody would be knocked out or something. If I'm getting a text and I don't respond to it, there's a reason I haven't. I've either not read it or I'm busy. So to upgrade the text to an urgent phone call, I don't know. I don't see that as anything but annoying. To me, I don't know.
Okay.
But, I mean, it could be, you see it as convenient from both sides of the table, considering that you can answer a text really quickly with share your location, yes, no, and then you're done with it, right? Whereas a lot of times I'll get an incoming text, like you said, I'm busy doing something, and so I don't want to actually go through the process of opening it up and answering it. So, and I guess is the hook the fact that for you to send a knock, you have to have knock as well?
You have to have, I think both the sender and the recipient have to have the app.
Right, so you don't receive a knock. You obviously can't receive a knock without having the app itself. So the contingency is that then you can then send a knock to someone else, right?
Yes, that's right.
So it's not as annoying as you think, right? Because you have then obliged to receive knock if you're using it to knock other people.
So I'm not their target market, so I would never get knocked on.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of like ping, the old BBM ping, right? Where it's just like annoyingly you have to answer else because person's going to ping you. But
I think you don't necessarily have to answer it. Like you could, the same way as you're getting a phone call, you could mute it or ignore it or whatever, right? So you can, I guess, kind of ignore it in the same way that you would ignore a phone call that you decide to ignore. But there is this additional sense of urgency. I guess, like, there have been times I've sent people a text message and then I'm waiting, first of all, you almost expect these days to get an instant reply if you send a text, but 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, once you're at the 10-minute mark, you think, okay, this person is just not responding to me. So this is a way, I guess, to kind of urge a bit more of a, immediate response. But for me, I find a lot of times my wife is the one sending me messages, and a lot of times they are yes or no, or like, where are you? Are you going to be here soon? And I could just send her my location. I thought it was a cool idea.
I think it's a great build to acquisition as well, in the sense of, it'd be something that Android or Apple could easily build into their UI in terms of allowing you to quickly respond to text messages, right? Because they have now, like Apple and Android both have the ability to respond quickly to calls. Right. In terms of, here's, I'm not available right now, blah, blah, blah. But now you can.
Call you back later.
Yeah, now if, imagine on your lock screen, you could just say, yes, no, where are you? It doesn't have to be a call, but it could be something you could just quickly open and you say yes.
And I'm almost surprised that they haven't. This company came
surprising that it can't,
I've almost got that down to 2 buttons, though. Like, I'm trying to let that idea marinate and take a different lens to view it through. So if I've opted in and I do want to increase the communication speed with my wife, for example, I now do KK, which I guess I've learned is okay, but it's just quicker to type KK because it's in the same spot. So I guess my kids
just
are doing
don't type the third one by mistake.
Yeah, so instead of just okay, it's now KK.
That's the universal code for I'm a racist.
So what's the difference between
Oh, thanks. Wow.
If it's 3 Ks. Yeah.
Okay.
What's the difference between KK and K?
I'm not sure.
So why has KK entered your life and changed it so dramatically?
So instead of just K, it's like okay, but it's 2 Ks.
So you basically said, I hear what you're saying, and I come back.
And I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it. But whereas K is like, I've accepted this, and I haven't processed it yet.
Right. That could be. So it's really 3 taps. It's KK send. So the app that came up with
first.
Have to open it, right? So I have to hit.
So it's a swipe then a KK.
Yeah. So it's just like an acknowledgement.
So it's a 4 tap.
So
swipe.
if you moved four clicks or 4 movements to 1 swipe.
Yeah. So that.
I'd like an app that's just
that could be
either
swayed.
Like acknowledged,
not
like. Like somebody sends me a message and I just want to say, yes, I've got your message. I don't want to actually send back any content.
Isn't that just read receipt you can have on or something? Where it said your message was read?
Even just like a thumbs up. Like no other button but thumbs up is the only thing that I want to send.
You want highlight then?
No, I don't want highlight. Too stalkerish. If you don't know what we're talking about with highlight, you can look it up. It's a very stalker-focused type of app, but maybe that's another app we should develop. Hey, if anybody out there develops an app that just sends a thumbs up, I guess this is like Yo as well.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Yo, by the way, Sam?
I quite don't understand it, but I've heard about it.
I think a thumbs up is better than a Yo anyway, but that's just me. Yeah, it's like a poke. Anyway. All right, well, we'll see. If anybody develops it, we want 20% equity. That's our standard deal for our listening base, right?
There's some good knock-on-wood jokes with the name, too.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah. Perfect. Well, let's move on to our second article. So there is another app. They've just recently raised $1.4 million. It's called Mama Bear. And it is a...
So Mama Save was very topical for this one. Then.
It was,
right.
yeah.
Right.
Perfect thing to choose. An app for parents to monitor their children's social media use, as well as a bunch of other functions that they're kind of expanding into right now. So the idea is that your children and you yourself, I guess I'm speaking from the parent's perspective here, being a parent, both halves of the equation would install this app. There's a dashboard, a simplified dashboard on the child's side. The parents have a little bit more options this way, but they both install the app, and then parents are able to see who their children are friending, who's kind of sending them likes or what kind of things they're liking on Facebook. They're able to get alerts. They can kind of set up geofences, and when your child moves outside of that geofence, then you get an alert for it. So they say they're going to their friend's house for a sleepover, and you can kind of set up a geofence around the house, and if
they're out at the graveyard,
so
drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
Explain to me how that happens. So it's a Facebook. It's an app itself.
It's an app, yeah. And
so
you'd
it
have
has a geofence.
So you'd have to install,
Facebook,
your Facebook account and everything
Gotcha.
gets connected to it. But then, you can monitor location. It says driving alerts. So if you have a teenager who drives over the speed limit, then it'll alert you to that fact.
George Orwell just rolled over in his grave.
Yeah.
It is.
No, seriously.
It is. And one of the, I think, a little more scary kind of big brother aspects of this app is you can have like a forbidden word list, so that if your child is updating their status, there are certain words they're not allowed to use kind of in their status updates, or maybe you get alerted if they do.
Isn't that a bit ridiculous?
Those. Yeah.
I mean, I always thought the fact that being a parent. I mean, obviously not a parent myself, so I can't speak too much. But
sure.
I mean, if you have to go to the extent of actually forbidding your children from posting a swear word on Facebook by installing an app and then forbidding that word on said app and then making that. I mean, that's
talk about setting yourself up for failure.
I feel like then I mean, where's the parenting come in, right? I mean, that's not really much of a.
It's true. You're letting the app kind of parent.
And if they're going to swear, I mean, if they're already going to input the word, does it really make a difference if they're going to input it on Facebook or if they've already said it?
It's a good question. And I did mention as well, they have for Instagram, you can preview the photos as they're being sent out on Instagram as well, right? So
on the app, wow.
Yeah. Also,
this would be perfect paired with Rogers home monitoring for the parent that wants to know from their work that their kid just walked in the front door and see it on the TV. And
sure, I guess, but
package.
All I can think of as a parent, now my oldest is only 4 years old, so I don't think I'm going to be using an app like this anytime soon, but like this seems like it's like a full-time job to just monitor seriously. All this. I have my own social media that I'm dealing with. Now I've got to keep up with, the output level of a teenager with what they're posting. I can't imagine.
I was talking to someone recently and they were, some guys up at Kick. And they're mentioning that they, a lot of their big customer base is obviously in the 13 to 18-year-old teens in North America.
Right.
And he was telling me that they spending 1,000 texts a day is normal for these kids.
Yep.
Really?
1,000 texts a day.
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old.
So can you manage monitoring 1,000 of those a day?
I can't imagine having the time to actually send 1,000 texts.
But then you don't realize it. That he was telling me, you don't realize it, but when you make that transition out of high school or out of school, period, right?
Yeah.
Your social life is so much more different than it is when you're, past that phase, right? So in high school, you have so much time dedicated to that, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, well, 1,000 I can see, but 1,000 texts a day.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of those, I see those and I read them. And for a while I was reading my son's texts and I politely declined to do so anymore because it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So he's just a 13-year-old guy. He's normal. I've done as best as I can. He makes good decisions. He's a smart kid. But sometimes it's
Does he listen
40,
to the podcast?
He hasn't yet, but he should.
We're going to force him to at some point.
He had 47 pile of poo emote icons in a row. Like it's just ridiculous, and it's all potty stuff, and they're going to get into
intellectual conversations happening in the 13-year-old world.
So I don't monitor anymore.
And I think back when I was a kid, like my level of communication growing up in the 80s and early 90s typically was I had a few pen pals that I wrote letters to. I talked on the phone a lot to my friends. Every night I talked to 2 or 3 friends probably on the phone for I don't know how many hours or whatever as a teenager, right? And then once kind of the BBS scene came around, I was doing some message boards and stuff online. But like, I can't imagine my parents listening in on my phone conversations or like proofreading every letter before I mail them out to a pen pal or two or whatever.
Right. I mean,
and this is essentially the equivalent of that, or looking at the notes that I write to my friend in class.
Just
before
because the technology exists doesn't mean we should use it.
That's what I've always understood. Not understood is like, I would spend, I was not even that young for me to have Kik and Facebook Messenger back in high school and stuff like that. But, I would never want my, I never expect my parents to monitor my phone calls every night just because kids can text doesn't mean that it's, their activity or behavior is changing, right?
Yeah, they're not building
You still have to be
now.
parents at the end of it, right?
Right.
I mean, like, yes, Snapchat and, MMS has allowed people to send pictures over text that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. But beyond that, I mean, the reality is that back in our age, we would have figured out a way around that anyways. I mean, it's not like it's
right.
It's true.
Like it's comes down to the fact that the kids are still kids, and they got to communicate. So
I'm a soccer coach, so I do I'm not a soccer coach. Let me rephrase that. I'm a parent of a soccer player.
But you do coach.
That got conned into standing on the sidelines of opposite the chairs where everybody's relaxing and watching the game.
Gotcha.
So as I'm managing these 13-year-olds, I was asking them last week. I think I asked 5 or 6 of them, do you guys have a Facebook account? And only one of them did. Now, these are under 13 boys soccer. So of these athletes, 1 out of 5, my son was included in that. He doesn't.
Yeah.
And he was asking for one social media a couple years ago, and he's really calmed down and stopped. It's been quiet. He's not wanting a Facebook page anymore.
Does he have his own
profile.
mobile phone?
He has his own iPod.
Okay.
That he uses Kik with a lot.
Touch,
And he communicates a lot on the PS3, where he'll get on and talk to his buddies through Battlefield or whatever he's playing, Call of Duty or whatever.
Sure.
They're shooting zombies and they're talking about what's going on this weekend at the same time.
Interesting.
So it's neat,
Yeah.
It's neat to see communication evolve.
It's nice to have a nice chat over some zombie killing.
Absolutely.
Nothing quite like it,
Steaming
really.
cup of coffee and some zombie splattering.
It's true. It kind of makes me long to have had that experience in my own childhood. But incidentally, just on that topic, I had a buddy who used to play Halo online all the time on Xbox or whatever, and he's in his mid-30s now, and this was maybe when he was like in his early 30s or late 20s, but he was spending like 2 hours a day essentially like swearing at 12-year-olds because he kept getting killed in Halo and
steep learning curve
and all this. And one day he was like, I just realized like I'm spending all my all this time being so angry and yelling my head off at these kids. Like it's not worth it, man.
It's not worth it.
So that was the end of Halo Online for him.
I just mute everyone when I do that stuff. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
He was spending 2 hours a night doing that. He's just dipping his foot into the world of gaming.
Well, I know. When the 12-year-old has invested like 1,000 hours of gameplay and you're only at hour like 56, like it's not an even fight.
Keep bonking into the wall in the corner.
That's right. Yeah. Well, let's move on here. I couldn't see myself using this particular app, I think, either. I think what it comes down to is you want to have real life trust with your kids. So if you feel like you're
if they don't trust you, then how are you supposed to trust them? The same.
Exactly.
Same as reverse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Well, let's move on. This is probably the most intellectual of all the articles we're looking at today. The high-tech toilet paper roll monitor.
The future of IoT, right?
Yeah. IoT?
Internet of Things.
Oh, Internet of Things. I thought the T stood for toilet. I was wondering what the IO stand for.
That would have been a good joke.
The Internet of the toilet, I guess, right?
I like that. That's a new one. We should put that in your next thing.
Knock.
We should. So this is a device called the RollScout, and you have to kind of see the thing, but imagine your standard kind of toilet paper roll holder. It's like a bar that sticks out of the wall with another bar you slide the roll onto, right?
The big L.
That's right. So this thing is very similar in design, except that it has like an infrared beam that kind of goes across where the toilet paper sits. And so when the roll is running very low, the beam is no longer blocked by the toilet paper roll.
Hits your wall or whatever.
And it hits the sensor. Well, there's a sensor on the other side. So it hits the sensor and alerts you to the fact that you're getting low on toilet paper. Now, I think
that's important.
I think this could be useful if it had the functionality of being able to send you a text message or an email or some sort of alert on your phone. But as of now, it does not do that. All that it does is light up a little circle that's attached to the roll itself, which kind of begs the question, can't you just look at the roll and see that you're low without having a light kind of flashing?
Is this a real thing?
It has a Kickstarter campaign that is currently running. They are at $6,343 out of $37,000 that they're trying to reach.
$37,000 to make that thing.
Apparently, and there's still 22 days to go for those of you who are interested in a high-tech toilet paper roll. Apparently, according to the Kickstarter campaign, mobile alerts is something that's planned as a future rollout feature.
Right. A future rollout?
Rollout feature. I wish I could say that I intended to say that, but it just snuck out of my mouth.
So let me walk you through this, Darren. It's pitch black at night. And your son, you've just heard him go to the bathroom in your bathroom. And
right.
You're thinking, why is he using the ensuite in the master bedroom? Why is he not using his bathroom?
Bedroom? What kind of fancy place do I live in? All right, keep going.
You get up to go to the bathroom, and you can see that your bathroom is glowing red. So you'll know that, he's emptied it. So I'm going to have to either bring a roll with me or get under the sink to replace the roll.
So you're saying like the best use case is middle of the night, pitch black room. I see a red glow, and at 1:30 in the morning, I think I should go replace the roll in the toilet paper.
The room is glowing red. Yes, you're not with me on this. You don't see the.
I don't know, man. I think
right
I
now?
just take my chances of getting up in the morning and if I have to call my wife to grab me an extra toilet paper roll, like. That it's happened in the past. I'm sure that it'll work.
Honey, hello, anyone? And
if you're living alone, then you can bear the shame of having to clench until you can grab some more toilet paper. I don't know.
Guilty.
Clench of shame.
I think this is just another one of those crazy things that have now lomped onto this whole trend, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Maybe in the future it becomes something that could be linked into a greater Google-made home monitoring system where every single thing is monitored up to the ninth level, right? But
your milk is about to expire, your toilet paper is about to go out, and your salt in your water softener has got 2 days left.
Sure.
That'd be cool.
You and your fancy water softener. Anyway, but what I can see this being useful for is like I found this with a lot of things in life. Generally, when I'm at the grocery store, walking around, I'm not thinking about my toilet. I'm not thinking about the toilet paper. It's
most
the same
people are, Darren.
But like any non-food item, it's easy for me to look at the food items on the shelves and say, "Oh yeah, I could use some of that. I could use some of this." I generally don't even walk down the toilet paper aisle, right? And so I could see the need for when I'm in the grocery store, I've got an alert sent to me on the phone saying, "You better get some toilet paper. You're down to your last roll, or you're down to your last 3 wipes." Before you join the left-hand club
accurate,
or something,
is it?
right?
It's down to the last one. It's down
to
a single-digit wipe.
He's a 4-square wiper.
A 4-square.
Yeah. So 3 wipes he cannot. He's done.
Measure
4
out
of
exactly
those perforated squares.
You measure out 4 exactly.
I do. I'm pretty anal about it.
No pun intended. There it is.
That was good. He got one in.
We didn't set that up at all, did we? But I'm the same way when it comes to like buying deodorant or shampoo. Same thing. I always think when I'm in the shower, I'm like, oh man, I'm almost out of shampoo. When I'm at the store, I never think about shampoo.
So wouldn't this be more useful than in the case where you're storing your toilet paper?
Right.
If they can make a rack, it'd be when you're talking about that, it'd be cool is if they can make some sort of rack that would work for the bathroom,
right?
Where you could have all your extras of toothpaste, toothbrush. Because I've definitely experienced the same thing where I'm like, I know my toothbrush is running low. Do I buy another one or do I have extras at home?
Right.
So I could see that definitely. But I mean, if it's actually on the active toilet roll that you're using, I mean, you're definitely going to have most likely other rolls sitting around.
Yeah. And that's what you need to know about is how many backup rolls do we have?
Exactly. So that would be a good extension of this would be like an actual roll keeper where it tracked how many people.
Yeah. 20% equity, folks, if you invent it.
Who needs to know that you have 3 pickles left in the jar? You need to know if you have another jar of pickles.
Exactly.
Right?
Like, how like they have those racks in storage spaces for for kitchens where they have, all the Campbell soup coming through.
Yep.
Well, you could, if you could identify that this is the Campbell soup rack, this is the, tomato sauce rack, this is the pickle rack. And then I could check on my phone, we're out of pickles, we're out of mustard, we're out of Campbell's.
Just run it like a business.
And it's very simple. Like you said, just an infrared that just detects if there's anything at the thing. If not, it sends you you could just load up an app and you could see all your different levels, right?
That would take this all the way, though. So then I load everything up, set it to par. It automatically knows and phones Costco, phones my order. And Costco calls me and says, hey, by the way, your house called me and said you're out of some stuff. It's here. Come pick it up.
No, and next level.
And you've already paid for it.
Amazon delivers it via drone as you arrive from
like
work.
That. And then my robot wife is using it as I get home.
I've
seen that. That is really cool.
The only problem with drone delivery is how tempted are you going to be to like shoot down the drone or capture it and hold it ransom for more free stuff or something.
I would just pretend that I didn't get the package yet, so that I could just play with the drone for a couple more days.
Yeah, that's
It's got a camera on it. Sir, we're looking at your face right now as you're
just currently lying naked in your bedroom with the drone on your chest looking at it.
Please, sir, please turn the drone camera off. The drone you don't have.
But on the plus side, I just ordered a box of,
Kleenex wipes?
Yeah, of Kleenex wipes, and I got a free drone thrown into the package.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like it.
Works out well. All right, so I think we all agree then the infrared toilet paper roll needs some improvement in functionality or at least some tweaking before it's going to catch on.
The one thing that I've learned working here at Communitech in the startup services role is that, as crazy as the idea sounds off the bat, you never discount it just for the sake of being what it is. Because, people that are behind these projects, they've put a lot of hard work and effort and creativity into this. And there's usually, either they can turn it into something better or there's usually an ulterior motive to why it's kind of there. So it's always fun to poke fun and it's what you have to do. But
this can be the catalyst for something that's truly useful, right? Even if one of us actually makes it at some point.
Dun dun.
It's all about the pivot, right?
Everybody uses
from this idea,
and literally everybody in the world uses toilet paper. Well, except in those countries where they just use their hands. But literally everybody uses toilet paper. So if you can innovate on on the bum wiping functionality somehow, then there's a very large market out there waiting for you.
In my opinion, if WhatsApp can be bought for $19 billion, then a toilet paper roll tracker, it might be worth at least a couple million.
It might be.
Mobile bidet in your cell phone.
Like a Nest but for a bidet, right?
Yes.
Honey, turn it on.
And on that note, there's
been a lot of sanitary references in the last poop texts. Four square rolls. I see a common theme.
Everyone can relate to poop. We do it every day. Some of us do it every day. Yep. Hopefully we do it every day. So let's talk about you, Sam.
Okay, I like it.
What a segue.
There's a lot of toilets in my life. So
yeah, sure, no problem. So Sam, we know you're with Startup Services here at Communitech. You started relatively recently here, but maybe I don't know where we want to start. Let's kind of start with what you were doing before you came to Communitech first, and then maybe later on we can hear a bit about what you're doing here now.
Yep, definitely. So I graduated University of Waterloo in engineering about 2 years ago now. So at the time...
What kind of engineering did you do?
We did nanotechnology engineering. So me and my partner...
That's right. You did something with Andrew Finkel, right?
We did. Actually, Andrew Finkel of Structured. Have you guys had him on yet?
Yeah, he was on a previous episode. And if I was a better podcast host, I could tell you right now what episode it was. But I can't remember. Maybe it was probably episode 3 or 4.
Yeah. Well, Andrew was...
episode 5.
Oh, episode 5. There we go.
Yeah, Andrew was my TA and lab instructor for a couple of my courses all the way through university. So it's funny that very serendipitous that now, we're ending up and working together in a more closer fashion just because he's now at the Hyperdrive program right here at Startup Services. So
we were talking to him 10 minutes ago. So your ears were probably tingling.
Yeah, it's a great guy. And during that time at University of Waterloo, me and my partner, Austin Lee, who was also in my class, we were really focused and concerned about, because both of us had different research experience back at University of Waterloo because we did co-op school there. We're very concerned about the idea of HIV monitoring in Africa.
Right.
Mostly this came up because of the fact we found a couple of studies done by a couple of different organizations that basically talked about the method by which people go into Africa and test HIV. So, nowadays, the medicine that they can use in developed worlds isn't very effective in developing worlds because it's too expensive.
Right.
And you have to administer it on a pretty regular basis. And the people who you're dealing with in Africa don't kind of have that regularity to their lives, right? So,
sure.
So the biggest thing that they can do in Africa, and the most effective thing they can do, is monitor where the HIV is spreading, and then administer education programs, outreach to those areas, and help so that the spread is stopped.
Okay.
Right. You can't really effectively treat the individuals, but you can at least see if you can stop the spread. So a lot of what these aid organizations are doing, we're going out to remote villages within Africa, collecting blood samples from the primary males and the primary females in the village.
Sure.
And then literally taking that blood vial and taking it all the way back to the main labs in the city. So if you can imagine, most of these villages aren't even accessible by car, right? So you're spending about a month to a month and a half before the results actually get back to the village.
Wow.
And so by the time that happens, not to be condescending to what's going on over there, but they've either spread the disease more, they've moved. Right. They've also, the fact that they've been tested also kind of gives a stigma to that individual, and therefore that the individual can be kicked out of the village or is not willing to talk to you again.
Yeah, you're not innocent until proven guilty. You're
exactly.
Guilty as soon as you're tested.
So I mean, and that's the other challenge too, is right when you get, they have to pull them into a tent and do the blood drawing, and people are resistant to doing that because the stigma attached to that is huge, right? So and it's because they only test a couple individuals in the village, right? They only go and say, hey you. So they're like, well, these guys must know something that we know, that the guys in the white jackets, right?
Right.
So,
so you're focusing more on prevention than on
we're focusing on we're focusing on the detection of it. So we wanted to use nanotechnology and some of the stuff that we had learned and some of the research that we had done to basically provide a 30-minute test or a 15-minute optimally test to basically test people on site, yes or no. So the other problem was that we, again, as many things that is with the developed world, we try to take our solutions, which are high-end devices that are worth $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and apply them to the developing world, and it doesn't work, right? And so we tried to build something that was made for the developing world and apply it. So something that was quick, portable, so that it could be used via a cell phone. So basically, all the client monitoring, the patient monitoring was done on the cell phone itself.
Okay.
So that we could geolocate exactly where the tests were taken. They could do a whole village in one day or several days, and basically, as the symptoms or as the positive and negatives were given back to the individuals, they could basically on the spot administer education or at least, segregate a group and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is how we can help the spread. Because in the end, they're killing their villages. They're killing their communities, right? So if you can educate that and get that across to the individuals, that's important. So we took something like that and we built it out in our fourth design project at the end of our school. We had a working prototype.
Wow.
That we could, it wasn't 30 minutes, but it was an hour, and we could demonstrate that we could detect it.
Okay.
And then after that, we actually ended up getting some money to go out to Edmonton, Alberta, supported by the government of Alberta, as well as some federal programs out of the National Institute of Nanotechnology out in Edmonton.
Wow.
To work.
I just like that. You said that very quick. That's like a really cool business card.
Its short form is NINT. Yeah, so it was great opportunity. We went out there. I mean, Edmonton and Alberta in general is really trying to push forward the focus on nanotechnology, which is awesome.
It sounds really sexy.
It does really. It sounds really sexy, but it's a lot unsexy when it comes down to actually what actually goes on, right?
Sure,
it's just it's a very on and off science sometimes, just because it's at such a small level that so many different things can go wrong.
Right.
Well, Rick Moranis was really the guy that started it all, right? With Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I was going to say, I don't know where you're going with that, but yeah, Rick Moranis is definitely the driving force behind it. That's a good one, actually. I should take that back.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you
go. So that's kind of where we focused, and we realized really quickly, actually, right as soon as we got out there, that within a couple of months, there was a researcher out of Australia who got an approved $1 per test paper strip for HIV.
Oh,
wow.
So, I mean, in retrospect, it was awesome, right? Because now that this thing is out in the world and it's working, right? So cool. Killed our business model really quickly, right?
Yeah.
So, so we basically, within a couple of months, we pivoted towards making our technology or using our technology for glucose monitoring for diabetics.
Okay.
We, because it wasn't as advanced as HIV, we embedded it in a cell phone case.
Okay.
So you pivoted then.
We did pivot, the classic pivot. And I mean, it was good. We got it to a developed world problem, which is closer to home, obviously.
Sure.
And again, I know talking about how dangerous HIV is for the developing world. I would say that the same way that HIV is for the developing world, diabetes is for the developed world.
Sure. My dad has diabetes, actually. So yeah,
it's a huge issue, and I don't think we acknowledge how powerful and how damaging it can be to our society, or will be in our society. I mean, China alone just released a study last year saying that they have 300 million potential diabetics.
Wow.
That's almost
the
population
of the United States.
Yeah.
Well, how many do they have in China? What's their
1.2 or something like that, or 1.1 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a huge problem. And so again, going back to the diabetics, these people who have diabetes, especially the juvenile diabetics who've grown up with their whole lives and are very, very dependent on these devices.
Yeah.
They're spending about 5 minutes, testing their diabetes, in several segments of the day, several intervals of the day, whether that be after meals, after exercising, before going to sleep.
Yep.
So we wanted to basically, we're stuck in this. The diabetes technology or glucose monitoring technology has been around for 20 years. And it's all been on separate handheld devices. Right. And we said, why is it like that? Why can't we just transfer that to a smartphone?
Right.
The smartphone is 10 times more powerful than any processor you're going to have on one of those devices.
Right.
Yeah.
As well as the ability to, visualize what's going on your smartphone, as well as, instantly be able to share and print what you're doing instead of right now, my partner's father tracks it on his notebook.
Mm-hmm.
That's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
I mean, how can that be possible, right? Especially since the technology itself has already been personalized and made electronic
mm-hmm.
in the form of glucose monitors. Yet they're still transferring that data to paper.
Yeah.
It's the exact same. My dad had a GPS for playing golf, and it's this individual unit. I'm like, that is dead. Like, who is going to buy that? The cell phones with the apps are for free, and
it's incredible. I mean,
he spent $300 on it.
It's incredible the power of marketing when you think about it that way. Because these guys, I'm sure they realize that they are obsolete, but hey, we'll market it until we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So
you had the glucose
really
monitoring going on, and what did that?
So me and my partner, we had 2 other engineers and an industrial designer on board, working quite full time, obviously on the project itself. Great experience, for anyone out there who hasn't gone through the experience of doing your own company like that. It's really it's emotionally, mentally very challenging, but at the end of the day, I think you get a lot out of it. But so what eventually happened to us is we're still in business in the sense of we're still kind of operating, but the glucose monitoring world is obviously it kind of rolled up into the whole pharmaceutical world, right? And the pharmaceutical world, like as many people who have even touched it know, it's very expensive business. And most importantly, my opinion nowadays is not just expensive, but it's also very much a connected business where it's all about
political red tape and all kinds of money thrown around.
It's all about who you know and who you can call, on your speed dial kind of thing, right?
Sure.
So as a small company, especially in Canada, in Alberta, there's not much of an ecosystem around the pharmaceutical world.
Right.
So it was very difficult to build those bridges. And so eventually what happened is we got caught up in a lot of regulatory compliance stuff, and it ended up killing our financial model, killed us in the financial stuff. So
draining your money, eh?
Yeah. So and not so much in the sense of we had to stop, but in the sense of that it wasn't making sense for me to work on it full time.
Right.
I couldn't afford to be paying rent, and paying for a gym membership. And taking that money out of the business when it really needed to be poured into the engineering side of stuff. So I decided to pull back on my full-time engagement, came back here last fall, and then started at Communitech. And in the meantime, we're still definitely working on it. We've had some notes back to how to kind of better our approach for regulatory and compliance stuff, which is awesome. And my partners and my other employers still working on it, but
so it could still go somewhere potentially. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more so now. It's more so of a labor of love in the sense of both my partner and our other employee, they have now had to take part-time jobs. And my partner's in his PhD, a very smart kid.
Sure.
And we'll definitely go places in that. So it's very much now, it's kind of it's a hobby for us in the sense of we work on it, think about what else we can do with it.
Sure. Are you allowed to tell us what the name of the product or the company
It's called Shield Diagnostics, as in a shield, sword in a shield, shielddiagnostics.com.
Okay.
So it's definitely still on the warpath per se, but it's not full steam.
Right.
Well, expect a huge bump now that you've got that.
I do expect. I'm going to check my page views tomorrow and see, make sure that's all.
Our listenership is just going to put this through the roof.
I think your phone's ringing right now.
I got to go.
No. Okay, so you found yourselves back here in Waterloo. I don't know if you actually said. Did you say you went to University of Waterloo?
I did go to the University of Waterloo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, and did you grow up here? Is this where you're?
So I grew up in. I was born in London, Ontario. I moved down to the States for about 12 years.
Oh wow!
When I was down to Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay.
For my dad's job took us down there. It was a great experience.
Okay.
We're really big outdoorsy guys, so the skiing and the mountain biking was definitely killer down there. I missed that. There's not as many mountains here in Ontario. Believe it or not.
Is that actually down or is that north?
Utah?
It's over.
It's actually technically over. It's not actually that further south than here it is.
Yeah. I wonder if
it's weird because you don't realize how far London, Ontario, dips down.
South,
right?
Yeah.
It's almost quite south.
Yeah.
So
we think of all of the U.S. as down there, right? Somewhere. Yeah,
more underfoot than geographically south, but
I feel it's almost the mentality as well. As people say, I went down to Alberta. Just because it's just Alberta, right?
Yeah,
it's like Texas, so it associates it with down there, I guess. But it's not technically down there, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's true. So here you are back in Kitchener-Waterloo, and how did you end up finding yourself here at Communitech? I think you said you had started here in February, but you came back here in September, so we're kind of checking out the options for a little while. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was in the original Velocity when it really started getting off the ground in 2008, 2009, way back when it was just a residence back in the University of Waterloo.
And we should let our listeners know that Velocity is a program that's run by University of Waterloo to support entrepreneurs that are Waterloo students or alumni, right?
Yeah, if you haven't, check it out. Search Velocity Waterloo.
Yep.
Awesome companies. Many of your guests that you'll have on the future will probably be ex-Velocity guys.
Yep, we've had a few already, I think.
Yeah, probably. So I was engaged with Velocity way back in 2008, 2009, and Communitech was just getting off the ground at the time, and the ecosystem itself, in terms of what it is now, is really just starting then. And when I came back here, one of the biggest things I think a lot of us don't appreciate living in Kitchener-Waterloo and in Toronto, Southwestern Ontario in general, is that there's not many places elsewhere on earth that have the support that we have here.
Right.
I mean, going to Alberta for us was a really big stepping stone because we thought the money was what we needed.
Right.
In retrospect, the money was great, and and I really appreciate the opportunity and loved it out there. But in the same point, it's very tough to build a company with no one around you.
Right.
You really need not just the money. The money comes if you have my theory is that if you have a good company, money will find itself.
Sure.
You'll find the money eventually, but it's a little bit of a struggle, but I think you really just need a critical mass of bigger companies, companies at the same level as you, and mentors who have gone through it all to kind of help you through that process, right?
Sure.
And people who are sympathetic. I think most importantly, people who are sympathetic, because it's tough even having friends that don't know what you're going through at the time when you're starting a company, because they think you're cutting them out of your life.
Sure.
Because you don't have time for them, but it's really just because you're really busy.
Yeah. Oh, and I've heard being the CEO of a startup is one of the loneliest kind of positions you can take, right? Because you're doing so much on your own, and there's no one that you can really lean on,
for sure,
who understands what you're doing and who can relate to your situation, right?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is a lot of the decisions end up being on you.
Right.
Especially if you have your own financial stuff in it yourself.
Right.
Everything is on you, and as a anyone, regardless of what age you are, depending if you're 65 or 25. I mean, there's not many things in the world where all those decisions are kind of based on your shoulders. Especially even in bigger companies, you're CEO of bigger companies, you got other guys to lean on, right?
Yeah.
When you're in a small company, you got a couple of engineers that are doing their thing.
Yeah.
It's down to you to kind of make or break whether or not it's going to go forward. So
yeah,
it's such a funny thing that Communitech is able to offer is such an intangible that you're talking about right now. It's that in Alberta, you're in such a vacuum that you could initiate with an email, what do you think of this idea, to your network of people. But at Communitech, you're getting a coffee and you're able to just in 30 seconds bounce that off somebody or over lunch, or, there's just that environment is there where you don't have to consciously say, I'm going to ask somebody about this. You're just going about your day and talking to people and interacting, and you get that bounce back and that feedback. It's such a community more than
it is.
And the internet keeps you connected, but it's different when you're all in the same building.
For sure, and I think also being so many smart people, and it's people come here and they don't realize how many smart people there are in this small area, right?
Sure.
And I think that having that critical mass of smart people, as well as having people who are resourceful people who are willing to reach out, right? They're not, their egos aren't inflated to the scale of the fact that they're going to solve all the world's issues, by themselves, right? So people are also, it's a two-way street. People are also willing and have been encouraged, and they have models by which people have been successful only because they've reached out and people have helped them out, right? So
for sure,
we've had great success just with our podcast. Everybody loves to support it and talk about what they're doing. And
I think, that's another conversation unto itself, but I think that's very much a Kitchener-Waterloo thing.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing, and I think so too.
Now, Sam, we've mentioned Communitech several times in previous podcasts and today so far, but maybe you can just give us like a quick 1 minute summary of what is Communitech, why is it here, what do they do, what is the goal of the organization?
What that be?
Communitech's been around since 1997. At 1997, it was a partnership by a lot of the private companies in the area. So, BlackBerry, OpenText, IMS, those kind of guys jumping on board and trying to say, we're in a small area. It's not Toronto. It's not Silicon Valley. So we need an organization that goes out and builds our profile as an area, because as you guys know, one of the biggest issue is human resource in terms of getting the smart people into an area like this to build the companies that need to be built, right? So Communitech, that was kind of the mission, I think, in the 1997 going forward. And then, since then, in 2008, 2009, things really got off the ground with the acquisition of the tannery, the tannery space, which we're in now. And it's kind of evolved into what it is today, which is basically a company that has three main focuses, which is startups, small, medium enterprises, and enterprise. So, small startups is where I'm in a startup services group. So we deal with companies that I would say are from the 0 people, which is the CEO by himself with an idea, to maybe the 5 to 10 person employee group. So basically, what you're dealing with at the companies at that stage are people who have a basic idea of what they want to work on. They're kind of building it out. They already have built it out. They're at the MVP or prototype stage, and they're kind of testing it initially with customers. And then, we have a couple, a select few that have kind of made it past that point, which are now actually selling into customers. They're making money, and it's there's so many different ball games when it comes to starting your company. There's the very early, there's the first couple hires, there's the first couple dollars that you get in the door, and then there's the first stages of growth, right? How do you get from $100 a day to $1,000 a day, and how do you do that as efficiently and as with as little mistakes as possible, right? So we try to, beyond the intangibles of just providing a space where people can come in and chat about all the things that they're working on. Darren, you've come in several times and talked about all the interesting stuff you're working on. Just having that community to do that. Above and beyond that, we provide a lot of entrepreneurs in residence, or we call them EIRs, which are experts. You can look them up on Communitech's web page, but they're experts in varying different areas, including venture capital, marketing, serial entrepreneurs, and allowing these people to basically interact with people who are not just young in terms of age, but young in terms of their growth in the entrepreneurship journey, I would call it, to kind of just step over a couple mistakes that they made early on, as well as, the biggest thing about Communitech, I think, is the network. Right. So we accelerate people's network growth when they need it. Right. So when they come to us and they say, we need help with this, or we're looking into this area, we're trying to sell into this market, we do our best to try to connect them with the people who we know who are in that area. Right. So I think that's the main focus of the startup group. The SME group is new, which is small, medium enterprise. So they're dealing with, as our ecosystem has evolved and matured, we have a lot of companies that are now within the 15 employee to the 50 employee stage, right? That's the medium. And those guys are really just, they're exploding, they're growing too fast, or they're trying to grow really fast. And they're a whole new set of tools in terms of how we can help them, right? And again, a lot of that is network, as well as just supporting them and supporting the development of their employees. One of the biggest things is you have people who start a company at the CFO level or a CTO level. We call it floating up, right?
Right.
They end up in a 50-person organization are the CTO of the company, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the reality is that sometimes those people aren't the best people, or haven't been trained at least to be a CTO of a 50-person company. They're a really good 5-person company CTO, but not a really good 50-person.
Sure.
So providing programs or providing ability for them to basically develop who they are and how to manage a 50-person organization, it's really big difference from actually having, because those at that level, you're no longer doing the development. You're managing people, right?
Of course.
So it's another day. And then the last one is the enterprise. So we're helping companies like TD, Canadian Tire, BlackBerry, OpenText, Manulife, Canon, all come on board, and how do they accelerate and become more competitive with this, technology growing world, right? So how do we enable them to use our ecosystem to basically leverage our tools and resources at the startup level to make themselves more competitive, right?
And Canadian Tire Innovations has taken that bull by the horns.
They have,
sort of leading that charge,
and they've done a lot of great stuff out of there. And it's incredible, because I think one of the biggest things, and nothing, I'm not that I hate Canadian Tire or anything like that, but it's very tough. I can understand from their perspective to hire smart developers, hire cool developers, or that techie generation, and get them to pull them into Canadian Tire headquarters and sit them down at a cubicle and say, hey, make something neat, right? Make something that makes us different.
Sure.
So allowing them to sit in an area such as Communitech, where it is the tech ecosystem here, basically just allows them to recruit people who are cool and creative, and who probably regardless would be working on their own startups. So now they're working on the Canadian Tire startup.
Yeah,
right?
and Craig Haney's had a lot to do with that, I think, too.
For sure.
Hasn't he?
Yep,
He's a
definitely.
dynamic leader.
So it's really pushed it forward, and it's been actually a model for how other companies like Manulife and TD are going to try to use that to leverage into their own ecosystem and sphere of influence, right? Because there's so much. It's just the corporate world. There's just so much waste and so much excess that comes with that, and so much protocol that just doesn't jive with the startup culture, right? So if you remove little parts of your organization into a space like this, there's a lot of synchronicity that can come forward, and a lot of really creative thinking that wouldn't otherwise, and not that it wouldn't otherwise happen, but it might just be.
It's harder to do it in the cubicle farm.
More likely getting squashed, right?
It's easier to have cool ideas here than...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the main sphere of everything that Communitech does right now.
Now, I know Communitech runs a lot of really cool events. Yep. I try to make it out to as many as I can well. So what are kind of some of the highlights of events that somebody who's doing a startup might want to get involved with or come out to here?
So a couple upcoming ones. There's Techtoberfest, which is always a big blast, and Oktoberfest time.
Right.
For those of you that are outside of Kitchener-Waterloo, Oktoberfest is the second largest Oktoberfest outside of Munich.
Right.
So it's a pretty big deal around here. It's a lot of fun, and we basically do a small type of
like a weekend conference kind of.
It's actually on a Thursday, Friday, I think, and this year it's going to be around funding. So how do you, we have a pile of VCs coming in from all over the place to come in and see our companies, as well as pitch and tell us kind of what our company should be doing to kind of reach them properly.
Okay.
Sounds like Christmas more than Halloween.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, it will be Christmas because I think they're going to be tapping a keg halfway through the conference. So
sweet.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yep. VC dollars and beer. That's
can't beat that, right?
Combination.
Yeah, can't beat that. So that's one of them, and the other one is called a showcase event, where we'll be showing off a lot of our leading companies, both from Hyperdrive and Communitech in general, which is across the ecosystem.
Right. Awesome.
And
I know I came to an event here, a startup weekend event, where you build a product over the course of a weekend. I think it was run by another organization that was kind of using Communitech maybe as their...
Yeah, they Startup Weekend is actually an organization unto itself. So we actually allow them, most of our employees, a lot of the people who are running the event were actually Communitech employees, but they volunteer to help facilitate. And they basically bring a facilitator in from the organization who has been trained how to do it, right? Because they have a specific model that seems to work for them.
Sure.
But those are great.
Is that coming up
too.
Again? Or?
There's one in Muskoka in late August, and then there'll probably be one back here in the fall sometime, I'm sure.
Sure.
It's a pretty great opportunity to bring in people who are kind of on the borderline of entrepreneurship and want to dive in.
Sure.
To just get it quick and dirty one for 48 hours.
Yeah.
And see if they like it or not.
I had a great time when I did it myself, so I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
I've also heard of these collision events. What are those all about?
Yeah, so Startup Services, we run 4 different collision events. There's Industry Collision, which is basically bringing in big brands like Facebook, Microsoft, into our community, and basically allowing them an opportunity to pitch their services that are applicable to startups.
Okay.
So Microsoft pitches Azure. trying to get people on board with that, trying to pitch the value prop to them in terms of why start with us instead of Amazon Web Services or Rackspace.
Right.
And then we have Talent Collision, which is basically helping people find startups and startups find people. So, one of the biggest issues that we have around here is because startups are so small and resource limited, as well as time limited, most importantly, it's very tough to go out and find. And, every single employee at the 5 employee scale is a very important person.
Important person. Yeah, we got you.
So you need to be able to find those people quickly and as easily as possible, and need to be people that are effective and can jump onto the team, right? So we use the Talent Collision as a really good way of kind of getting that mix going quickly.
Okay.
We have Customer Collision, which is basically programs where we, for example, we brought 120 realtors in front of 10 real estate related companies in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
So kind of accelerate, again, using the network effect to accelerate. You notice that most of these are all network based things, right?
Sure.
And then lastly is the Capital Collision. So I actually run that program where basically bringing in VCs and angels and investors from around the world,
right.
And giving them a chance to quickly and easily visit as many companies as possible in the area. So that's usually in a 30-minute pitch format. So they get 20 minutes to pitch, 10-minute Q&A, and then out the door.
For each company?
For each company.
Okay.
So, all that kind of stuff can be accessed very easily through the startup services. So if you get engaged and you can ask the people.
Well, and this is my next question. So if I'm Joe Blow, startup guy, and I all I have is my idea, and maybe I can write a little bit of code for it. I want to hook in with the resources that Communitech has to offer. How do I go about doing that? Does it cost me any money to do that? How does it work?
For sure. Everything at Communitech, for the most part, is free.
Right.
I think our biggest thing is, one of our big mottos is that, no company left behind, in the sense of it's not up to us to pick or choose who's the black swan in the group. You can, at the stage of a 0 to 5 employee person company, it's very tough to say who's going to be the winners, who's going to be the losers. So we don't believe in picking sides. We just believe in backing the entrepreneur themselves. That's what we do. So it's all free. You can search online. If you search Communitech and then Startup Services, all in Google, it'll come up as the first link.
And do I sign up on an online form? Or?
Yeah, there's a form that you fill out and you submit to us, and basically we make sure that you're a tech company that's in our realm of being able to help out. If you're a company that we can't help out, we'll tell you up front, because we don't want to waste your time or ours.
Right.
But for the most part, everyone gets accepted, and we engage with you on a 1-hour meeting to start off, to kind of get the ball rolling and figure out what you need. And then most importantly, how can we help you? And then lots of things can happen from there. So it's really a thing of, regardless of how nascent your idea is, I encourage you and everyone who has an idea to go out and try it. And I think, the biggest thing for an entrepreneur is, it's really easy to think up an idea, but it's really hard to make that first step in actually building that company.
Sure.
So we're here to kind of hold your hand, in the essence of help you through that process.
Okay.
It's not as easy and as glamorous as everyone makes it out to be, like Mark Zuckerberg in a movie.
Right.
There's a lot of, talking to anyone who's done it themselves, they'll tell you that it's really painful.
Right.
But we're here to kind of be a couple Band-Aids on top of that pain. So
we appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And maybe my last question is, so where do you see things going in the future here? I mean, Communitech just being here today, it looks like it's a fairly busy place. Is it going to grow? And are you finding there are more startups coming through the door now than there used to be, even in your limited time here so far?
Yeah, I mean, even when starting here, we were getting about, I think, 2 to 3 companies a day, and now we're up to 3 to 4.
Wow.
And that's just signing up on our website. So, I think we're seeing, I think all my friends that are in Toronto, it's great. Toronto's a great city, but you're really missing out on some pretty exciting stuff here in Kitchener-Waterloo, because there's just so many smart people and so many good ideas coming out of the woodwork now that Communitech's got a little bit of more visibility than it used to, right?
Sure.
We get a lot more people coming in just from, inbound requests of hearing about Communitech, which is great. It's not about building Communitech's brand in the essence of, making us famous. It's about building the brand enough that every single person in this community gets engaged. And so therefore our network will be 100 times more powerful than it was before, right? And I think in the future you're going to see, Communitech, Kitchener-Waterloo has been responsible for a lot of pretty amazing, groundbreaking technologies. I mean, think of, BlackBerry. Not one gives them credit for the fact that they basically invented the smartphone revolution, right?
Yeah.
Think about Wattcom and all that kind of stuff. All the compilers that were built.
Yeah.
The fact that 90% of all satellite television was going through ComDev at one point, right? And still to this day probably is.
Yeah.
So, Waterloo itself has built some pretty amazing companies, and I think you're going to see a whole new era in terms of the new companies that are coming out now, including Vidyard and Thalmic, as well as Ariane Labs and Kik. There's lots of really great companies that are really at that bursting point where it's just going to take 2 to 3 years to figure out where they're going to sit and where they're going to land, and hopefully one of them will hit it big like BlackBerry and will be a whole new city. And I'm sure one of them will, because all these companies have great entrepreneurs behind them, so it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's is it communitech.ca if we want to go to Communitech site?
Communitech.ca or communitech.com.
Oh, .com will take us there too. Okay, so, perfect. And do you have like a Twitter handle or something if we want to follow what's going on?
It's at Dobo D0B0.
D0B0.
Yeah, it's a long story. It was from my youth, and I never changed it. So.
Oh, all right.
But D0B0, that's me.
Dobo.
They didn't have Twitter in my youth, but
well, yes.
Just the word.
Just the word itself. Yeah,
not the account.
Well, because I remember when Twitter first started, you needed to have both. Or was it Twitter or somewhere else? You needed to have both a letter and a number in your tag.
Right.
So it was originally Daba, which was my nickname back when I was a kid, but I had to have numbers, and I didn't want to put a Daba in 1989, right? So Hotmail was dead by that time, so we moved to that. So
interesting. We'll have to, when we have more time, another time in the future, we'll have to get the story of where you get the name from you.
Awesome.
But for now, we're coming up on an hour, so we should wrap things up here. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on another episode of TSP Weekly. Special thanks to Communitech for letting us record here today. It's nice to get out and see some other places sometimes. Please feel free to send us your comments, your questions, your criticism, your feedback at feedback@tspweekly.com, or you can always just go to the blog entry for this podcast on tspweekly.com and leave us some comments. That would be great. We have on our next episode, which we are very much planning to record this Thursday, Ivan Lukyanchuk.
Yep, it's a long one.
Yep. Lukyanchuk.
I'm sure he'll tell me the better way to pronounce that when it comes up, when he comes on. But
Lukyanchuk.
He has a very interesting app called This Is Your Out, which we'll tell you all about next time. So from myself, Darren Conley, my co-host Stephen Campbell, and our wonderful guest, Sam Legge.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you all next week.